Hello, hello. If you've been training for a long time, whether that be by classes or on a program, and you're not seeing results in line what you expect, this video is going to help you, as it's going to show you why your overall programming method might be holding you back. Now, I'm always astonished the amount of people I coach for the first time who've never experienced a program layout like the one that I coach. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what layout I use with my athletes, why it's effective, and if it's not something that you are currently doing, it's something that I encourage you to employ within your own training so that you can go forward and get results, because this is a scientific, basic, long-lasting principle of how you train somebody in any situation to get stronger, fitter, faster, and more skilled. Okie dokie. So the problem with CrossFit in general is there's such an ethos with turning up to the gym every day, and training hard no matter what, but with no real strategy in what you're doing. It's always just do the WOD, get the fastest time, lift the heaviest weight, whatever the case might be. And because the weeks over time look very similar, there's no real progressions, there's no deload, there's just a general ethos to turn up and grind. You end up with a training system that is not derived for getting results. And this is why people have plateaus and for a long period of time. And I hear sentences like, I've been trying to get this skill for 3 years, or I've been trying to get my strict pull-up for 10 years, or I've been doing CrossFit for 1 year and I haven't really seen much difference, or I haven't had a new PB in 6 months. There's a lot of times where athletes are stagnant, and it's because their training profile isn't directed to getting results. The way that I program for my athletes, and I would really encourage you to follow a similar pattern to this, is using a 4-week pattern where we progressively overload the athlete. We get to a point where their intensity is really, really high and the athlete is struggling to maintain anything else. Their body is on the brink where if we kept on going, they would be overtrained, fatigued, tired, etc. Then we take a full rest week and then we go into peak. So it's a very methodical, I played around with this a lot with different cycle lengths. And for the athletes I personally coach, which is the scale to intermediate level athlete wanting to get stronger, fitter, faster, more skilled, I found that a 6-week cycle is the most effective. Personally, I work on a 4-week cycle. So I do 3 weeks of a build, then a deload. And that is because my training volume is typically much higher than the training volume I coach. So for the most part, athletes training between 2 and 5 days a week, doing roughly hour sessions. This plan works really well. So diving into this a bit more deeply, on week 1, we really should be setting the program and the new program up. So all the new movements, the new methods, how the week is going to be structured together as a whole. And the purpose of this is just to get numbers on the board and for the athlete to become associated with the week of training. Weeks 2, 3, and 4, we want to, in a stepwise fashion, make pretty much everything within that training week harder. So the training week stays the same. You do the same movements on the same day in the same kind of structure, but everything gets harder. So intensity goes up, weights go up, reps might go up, form hopefully goes up if it's a skill that you're learning. The difficulty of the drill might go up. Whatever relates to the particular exercise will get harder. And we do this for 4 whole weeks. So by the time the athlete gets to here, we're in a state where there's something called overtraining, and we don't want to get to overtraining, but we want to get to a point of overreach. And that is where we're tiptoeing on the line of as far as you can get before your body needs a break to recover. So we get to that line on week 4, we take the full week to recover, and then we peak in week 6. So a huge amount of myth busting I need to do now. I am amazed by the amount of athletes I coach that when they get to their deload in week 5, they panic because they've either never taken a deload before, or they have taken a deload, but they normally do 12 or 16 weeks before they get there. This deload week, if you don't have it, by the time I got you to week 4, if you carried on 2-3 weeks, you'd be injured, you'd hate your life, and you'd be really burnt out, because the level of intensity that we build over these 4 weeks isn't sustainable. And so it's really important that it is backed up with a deload so that the athlete can recover. And in the same breath, Athletes who never deload, their level of intensity during the session never really gets to this point because this is not sustainable. Maybe it stays here for a long period of time, but this isn't really the level of intensity that drives change either. So in order for us to push the bodies and push the training to a level where we get great adaptation, the body is working really hard. So it has to be followed up by a deload so that we can continue to do it. And by following this cycle every 6 weeks, it's why we see huge changes in performance in just a couple of months, as opposed to athletes working hard but doing the same thing that doesn't really work for years. Okay, so this is going to explain a little bit more about the deload itself. This is called the supercompensation effect. You may have heard it, you will have done if you've studied in this area. This is it on a very micro level, just to explain the principle. So you come in before training and you have this level of fitness, whatever this is. During your training session, when you're working hard, you're doing your sets, your reps, your conditioning pieces, your performance is actually going down because you're using up your stores, and the longer you exercise for, the worse your performance gets. You finish your session and your body has a period of recovery, which hopefully you're doing well, where you're eating good food, sleeping, etc. And during that time, your body fills up all the stores that it's used, it repairs the muscles that were damaged, and as long as you recover for the right amount of time after the session, you experience a supercompensation effect where now your baseline fitness level is up. So in the next session, in theory, you would come in at this level. You do the same thing. You'd experience the training dip, the recovery build. Now your supercompensation is here. So in the next session, your baseline fitness is here. Now this is a very exaggerated version, but you can see how over time you experience this cyclical motion and your training goes up. Now, the problem with this is if we don't employ the right amount of recovery, you don't get the curve to come back up to baseline and exceed it. And maybe you come back in and you've gone down. And these are the athletes that end up burning out and overtraining. So with the right amount of recovery within your training week, and also the right amount of deloading in your training cycle, we can expect to see a really predictable upwards trend in your strength, your fitness, and your skills. And that is why it's really important to follow a cyclical training plan. So hopefully that has addressed why this is a problem. Or not a problem, I should say. Okay, similarly, why should you peak at the end of your cycle? A lot of the time, athletes on other programs will do their deload and then they'll change their cycle. I find that the level of adaptation that athletes can see from this supercompensation, if we don't put a peak week in and retest skills, PBs, etc., we never truly see the results of what happened in these weeks 1 to 4. So I have athletes that hit PBs in something pretty much every cycle, depending on what we're working on. So it's a really nice way to finish off and feel a training win. Also, what's nice about this peak week, because you've built up the intensity, you've rested and recovered, you can come back in at a high level of training output in week 6, but you're not going to feel the fatigue you felt in week 4 because you've had this deload week in. So you hit your peak, then you reset back at the next cycle down here and from intensity. Okay, so this only works as well if the content that you are doing within your sessions is well thought out. So this is just an example skeleton program of one of my compete methods. There's no way a single athlete would do everything. This is just a rough grouping to show you how I would structure a training week, for example. So you'll notice things are grouped and they change day to day so that no one part of the body is getting overworked. So on this first training day, we're really focusing on pull strength. So we've got a lot of upper body pull, then a lower body pull with your deadlift, and then we're backing it up with a push-based gymnastic skill. On the second day, we're focusing around Olympic lifting. So we've got heaps of snatch work at the start. Then we're doing a glute accessory piece, and then finishing off with a pull-based gymnastic skill, so toast bar. On the third day, we're doing the flip of the Monday. So we're starting off with all push-based work, all your upper body first, and then a push-based lower body, so your squat. And then backing this up with a handstand walk. On your fourth training day, there's a mixture of different aerobic pieces. So we've got options for running, options for ergs, options for swimming, and then some high base skill work. Next up, we're doing overhead strength, paired with a clean and jerk, so still focusing on the overhead component, backing it up with some gymnastic accessories and pulling based skills, so looking at your pull-ups. And then on the final day, kind of a fun day, we've got a Hyrox piece, which is a 60-minute Hyrox simulator, and then again a very high school technical movement to practice with the bar muscle up. So by having a plan to your training structure, and there's so many different ways you could do this. This is just one example of a plan that I've done. You're grouping elements together on different days and you're keeping that consistent throughout the cycle. If you don't have the consistency in your weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4, then your training becomes random. You can't overload and you end up just with a week 1 for 4 weeks, which isn't getting you anywhere. Then you take a deload. You're not recovering from anything. You've got to make sure that you're stepping things up, and to step things up, you have to be repetitive. Okie dokie, here is just a little bit of motivation. Here are some athletes I've been coaching for a long time. So you've got Melek, Hannah, and Ellie. These are athletes that have been following the 6-week cycle progression for a number of years, and all of them have unlocked really hard skills, really heavy lifts, and are really fit. So it just goes to show that if you get your training pattern in order, you're gonna be on the right way. So these athletes all have completely different goals. They started at different points, but they've been progressively overloading and deloading every 6 weeks for a couple of years, and they're all completely different athletes now than they were. All right, team, I hope you found this useful. Some take homes today: be repetitive, make things harder week to week, take your bloody deload, and then come back and peak and hit some PBs.